Tatsuki Fujimoto, the author of Chainsaw Man, about which I've already talked a lot on the channel, but also of Fire Punch, Look Back and Goodbye, Eri, began his mangaka career, like most of them, with short stories of around 40 pages, and decided to compile these 8 little stories in 2 volumes, 17, 21 and 22, 26, which refer to the age he was when he drew them. And since I've already talked a lot about him, and intend to continue doing so, I thought it would be a good opportunity to do a review video of these 8 little stories one by one. Two Chickens at the Bottom of the Garden, dating from 2011, is Fujimoto's first completed work. It's the first time he's drawn real finished panels, so it could be considered as his very first work. In 2019, aliens have invaded Earth, beaten them, and eaten most of them because they like the taste. And we follow Yuto and Ami, who have disguised themselves as chickens in a school garden to avoid being eaten. Funnily enough, there's already a touch of Fujimoto's style here, not so much in the drawing but rather in the narration. Right from the start, there's a bit of the parodic aspect of Chainsaw Man with the alien tsundere, but with a bodybuilder's body. But what's more recognizable is his ability to produce absurd situations that he manages to make funny through their quirkiness, and then to make them quite sad in the space of a few pages by creating some real serious drama around them. The result is a story that's both funny and touching, even if it's far from his current level of mastery. In fact, a comment from the editor to whom this one-shot was submitted at the time summed it all up nicely when he said, "Its ideas are incredible, but the overall structure is lacking." In the end, you get the feeling that Fujimoto had a lot of ideas and great potential, but that he was sorely lacking in experience, which is rather logical for a first one-shot. This time from 2013, Sasaki Stopped a Bullet tells the story of a student, Sasaki, who stopped a bullet. Yes, well, I can hardly sum it up any better than that without spoilers, sorry. In this story, we find the kind of femme fatale side we saw in Chainsaw Man or Goodbye Eri, as well as a bit of Fujimoto's saucy side, and of course the wacky side too, and always the desire to end on a touching note. There's also a slightly ambiguous side between reality and the supernatural, between logical and illogical explanations. In short, it's open to interpretation. All in all, it's a nice little story, and Fujimoto's favorite of the 4 in the 17-21 collection, which explains why he wanted to put his character on the volume's cover. Love is Blind, also drawn in 2013, tells us the story of a high school student who wants to confess his feelings to the girl he loves. It's my personal favorite one-shot of 17-21 because I just find it super funny. Throughout the one-shot, the character will always be way too serious on absolutely every page, as if he's about to do something extremely epic, and every time there's going to be something that's going to stop him from making his proposal. But whether it's a thief or an alien bent on destroying the Earth, he's going to get them all out of the way so he can make his proposal. In short, it's super funny, a little parodic, a little absurd, just like Fujimoto. For this one-shot, he commented that he was drawing in 31 pages a story that could fit on 16 pages. And that he should condense his stories, but on the contrary, it's because it's 31 pages instead of 16 that the one-shot is so funny. Fujimoto will also say that to this day, he still feels that he's telling in 31 pages what he could draw in 16, and personally, I'm glad that's still the case. Shikaku was released in 2014 after Fujimoto, who was ill, wondered what a storyboard conceived with a 39-degree fever would have looked like. It follows Shikaku, a sociopath who ends up becoming a contract killer and is hired by an immortal vampire to kill him. There's not much to say about this one-shot. It's nice without much more, but we can see Fujimoto's propensity for creating characters who are a bit crazy and colorful, as well as his very dynamic layout and trashy fights. I see it more as a little experiment on his part than anything else. In fact, he said he tried the same thing one day when he had a stomach bug, but the result wasn't great, so his publisher refused. Now we move on to the first story of 2226 with Mermaid Rhapsody, which is a story Fujimoto wrote in 2014 after hearing that he was unable to do a normal story. So he decided to make one, and as a result, well, we've got a rather nice story actually, rather cute in a way. We're in a world where mermaids exist and eat humans from time to time, so the relationship is a little tense, but we have a protagonist who spends his time playing the piano underwater, a mermaid piano, and who meets one of them and teaches her to play the piano. In short, it's a very sympathetic little story about benevolence, open-mindedness and tolerance, but on the other hand, it's the story that's the least Fujimoto of the 8 stories in these 2 collections. He wanted to do a normal story and succeeded, but coming from him, it feels a bit odd, almost forced in a way. In short, it's only natural that he should say himself that he still finds nothing special about it, but personally I like it anyway. The waking up as a girl syndrome tells the story of a guy who wakes up as a girl. Another brilliant analysis on my part, I know. On a more serious note, this one-shot was drawn in 2017, which means it was drawn during the publication of Fire Punch, given that he did Fire Punch between 2016 and 2018. And it's quite funny to see that the central theme of this one-shot is a theme he had treated differently in Fire Punch at almost the same time, that of transidentity. Warning, slight spoilers on Fire Punch. While Togata was about a girl who wanted to become a guy but couldn't, this one-shot is about a guy who turns into a girl against his will. He finds himself confronted with a whole host of problems, such as school and even sexual harassment from his classmates, the complexity of his relationship with his girlfriend, whether they can continue to love each other despite this change, and so on. In just a few pages, he manages to make characters we've only just met very touching, which is once again one of his trademarks. In short, I think it's an excellent one-shot. Nayuta's Prophecy, one of whose characters, Nayuta, is featured on the tome's cover, is a story that Fujimoto drew in 2015 and tells us about an older brother, Kenji, who has to look after his sister Nayuta, who is a cursed child with the power to destroy the earth according to certain prophecies. What's more, Nayuta only says morbid words and spends her time killing animals to eat them, in addition to not understanding the codes of society. In short, we follow her older brother, who has to look after her and protect her a little from the fanatics who want to get rid of her, while dealing with the problems she creates. It's a very sympathetic story between a brother and a sister, rather moving, and conveys a kind of devilman type of message, but with a happy ending. Don't give in to violence towards something you're afraid of or don't understand. Try first and foremost to understand it, because violence only calls for violence. Oh, and it's a jab at sectarians and religious dogmatists, who don't think by themselves, but only by means of vague prophecies. Also, I think a lot of Chainsaw Man readers will have caught on, but the Nayuta at the end of Chainsaw Man is obviously a reference to the Nayuta in this one-shot. Even the Chara design is the same. And the relationship between Denji and Nayuta will probably be quite similar to the relationship between Kenji and Nayuta in this one-shot, given the walking danger she represents. By the way, Fujimoto wrote this story after hearing that he was unable to create a character with a strong personality, so he went all out on Nayuta, and admits that she's a character he still likes very much. Hence, I imagine his desire to use her again in Chainsaw Man Part 2. Ah, and one last thing, this is obviously nothing more than a reference or reuse of ideas. Don't go theorizing about any link between this one-shot and Chainsaw Man. It may seem obvious to you, but I've seen people do it. The final one-shot in the collection, The Big Sister of the Little Sister, is a story Fujimoto drew in 2018, between the end of Fire Punch and the start of Chainsaw Man, and tells us the tale of a big sister who finds a nude painting of herself displayed in the entrance hall of her art school for a whole year, because her little sister painted her and won the school painting competition. The big sister's aim is to take revenge by drawing her little sister naked so that she can suffer the same fate. This one-shot tells us a whole lot of stuff, about art of course, but above all, about the relationship between sisters, the rivalry that can arise between them, the weight that the fact that one is more gifted than the other can have, and so on. But despite everything, the one-shot remains ultra positive and encouraging. Fujimoto will even say that this one-shot will serve as the basis for Look Back, his other, more recent one-shot, in which we follow the story of two friends who want to become mangaka together. In short, it's a very cool little story, especially as you can feel that it was close to his heart. In the end, these two volumes with their 8 short stories are quite enjoyable. Certainly far from the level of Fire Punch, Chainsaw Man, Look Back or Goodbye Eri, but I found them very enjoyable to read, especially as they show that Fujimoto isn't some genius who fell from the sky and started a revolution in the world of manga, but a guy who certainly had talent and a style all his own from the start, but who also had to work and progress a lot to get where he is today. And you can see this in the growing quality of these one-shots if you read them chronologically by release date. It's probably obvious, but I think a lot of people have this image in their heads of a genius for whom everything comes easily, whether it's Fujimoto or any other mangaka. I don't really like the word genius for that either. Anyway, I wanted to make this little video because I intend to talk a bit about all Tatsuki Fujimoto's works. First of all, because if we exclude these little stories which are very cool without being extraordinary either, I find that his 4 other mangas are all exceptional and that Tatsuki Fujimoto is really making his mark on manga history. I don't know when I'll do an analysis of Fire Punch, but there will be one day. It's my personal favorite Fujimoto manga and there's a lot to say, so it'll come. As for Chainsaw Man, well, I've already done quite a bit, I think. But given that part 2 starts on July 13th, maybe I'll talk about it. And the same thing when the anime comes out. As for Look Back, I'm not going to do anything for the simple reason that there's already an ultra-complete 55 minutes analysis in French that's so good, I really have nothing to add. It's on Bedemonsi's channel and frankly, go and see it. His level of analysis is really far superior to mine, it's quite impressive, and it highlights Fujimoto's meticulousness in terms of direction, paneling and so on. You should subscribe to his English channel, by the way, he's really good. And finally, for Goodbye Eri, maybe one day there'll be a big analysis video on the channel by Sosa. If he does, it'll be really good, you'll see. Anyway, that's all for this far too long conclusion. You can like, comment, subscribe, all that, and see you next time. Bye.